Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. So basically with this first section of the build, it's where I've got a piece of spare plywood and I'm sort of drawing out the shape that I need the hanging bracket to be. So it's basically when I'm forging it, I can then quickly turn to this design and then offer the pieces I forge up to it and then know if they're the right size. And here you see me moving on to the super fun bit, basically heating up the steel and forging it into the shape. So with this part, this is the back section of hanging bracket that will actually bolt or screw to the wall. And here I'm basically just forging out some fishtails at the very ends, and as it makes the steel super thin, it cools down very quickly, so I have to keep doing loads and loads of reheats. And then basically, once it's fishtailed enough, I then start to roll it over the side of the anvil into a nice little curve there. This is then moving on to the other end of the piece of steel. Just make sure you don't do the same mistake I did years and years ago, where you don't wait for it to cool down enough and pick up the end you've just forged. That is not a good idea. We then move to the forks on my anvil just to curve the end over there. This part that you see that's going into the forge is basically the main arm of the hanging bracket. So it's the part that comes out that the sign will actually hang from. Again, this needed several heats to forge it to a lovely nice point there. Then, using the bending tongs again, and then sort of forge the end into a lovely scroll, and then you end up going back on yourself. So basically this was the whole time just looking at the reference photos that I've got of the hanging bracket sign, or even the hanging bracket, sorry, from the film, and then also offering up this piece of steel to the plywood sort of pattern that I made at the beginning. It's just sort of, if it's a bit too much when I've offered it up, then yeah, back into the forge, straighten it out. Then if it's not enough, then it's back into the forge again, just bending it a bit more. It's just basically back and forward, trying to get it to be in the correct shape. There, it looked like I was burning the steel. Don't worry, I wasn't. It was actually a little piece of steel just stuck in the forge there. And this is moving on to, basically there's a lovely, really smooth arc in the sort of steel hanging bracket just above where the sign itself sits. So just nicely sort of tapping this and getting it into the shape. And again, this steel takes a lot of reheats. It holds its heat a lot longer because it is thicker steel, but it's just with this you really do need to heat it up a lot to get it to bend, because it is so sort of heavy duty compared to the previous much thinner stuff. This is the point in the build where you sort of look at the piece and you're not really sure if it's going to work out, and then it suddenly does, and you sort of want to skip around the forge because it looks so cool. Then this is basically just punching a hole into a piece of steel at the end, and then this you'll see in a couple of steps how it sort of links up to the rest of the bracket. I'm just using a hold fast there like you would with woodwork, and just to hold a punch there that I can sort of forge the hole around. Then I took they're basically just two 4-inch woodworking nails, heated them up and then pointed them a lot more, then curved them into a really tight scroll, and then back around these benders on the anvil there. You can see I just dip it down on the floor. There's basically a pot of water there, so I'm just cooling down the very tip of it so that when I sort of hammer it as I'm bending them, it doesn't scroll it too much and they come out nice and neatly. Then this next bit is basically a connection point between the actual arm of the hanging sign and the bracket that screws to the wall. And this just a really nice decoration, sort of decorative point of this hanging bracket, where it's an old-fashioned style of connecting the two parts, where the piece of steel that I basically forged the hole into, or punched the hole into, will then connect to this to hold everything together, which you'll see in a sort of photo in a second. So there you can see how that part I've just made in the middle holds it all together. We then move on to basically the pieces of the bracket that don't need to be heated up when you forge them. So this is just chopping some really sort of thin gauge steel that you can bend cold on the bending tongs on the anvil. Here you can see I'm just using, sorry, I said bending tongs, I meant bending forks. So using the bending forks just to scroll over the ends of these thin bits of steel, which are just nice little pieces that will go all over the hanging bracket just to make it look all pretty, basically. So here with this part, basically two really nice long decorative scrolls that mount onto the hanging bracket above, basically directly above where the sign itself will sit. And this is me just forging one of those. So it's the reason that I go away from the tongs every so often is because I'm offering this scroll up to that wooden pattern that I drew at the very beginning and seeing if I'm getting the scroll the right shape there. Then move to just centre punching and drilling out the holes, ready for those hanging nails that I may be welded all together, and then for the whole bracket to be welded in place. So I'm just using basically just an arc welder here, as it's the only type of welder I've got, just sort of tacking all the parts on. I would prefer really to use the old-fashioned style of punching holes and everything and riveting it all together, but it's certain things that I haven't got, for example oxyacetylene torch, things like that, that I think would make it pretty much impossible without those. So there we see the bracket welded together, and all I need to do now is just paint it using basically a sort of rust-proof black, really rugged sort of paint. And here we have the finished article finally. So with this, I'm really pleased with the way that end scroll came out. I haven't done any sort of blacksmithing work in so many years, and it just came out a lot better than I expected. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please tune in next time for part 2 of this, which will be the actual sign itself being made. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please like, comment and subscribe for more. Thank you.